Hi there and welcome to Craft Jitsu's How to Embroider a Skull video. In this video I'm going to show you how to make this skull using both hand and machine embroidery. It can then be kept in the frame and made into a piece of hoop art. Now this is the skull design we're going to use. I've printed it onto this paper and it's also available on craftjitsu.com. And as you can see, all this cross hatching makes it perfect for copying in embroidery. And this is the fabric we should be using. I'm afraid I can't remember exactly how I made it. But colour up your fabric exactly how you want it. Now making sure your fabric is nice and tight in the hoop and the hoop is upside down so it's for machine embroidery, centre your image. Now we're going to stitch around the main outline of the skull, and as you can see it's quite a thick line, so we'll make it into two thin lines of stitching. Then we'll stitch around the teeth, the nose, the eye sockets, and some of the basic main lines so that you can see where your hand stitching is going to go. I'm sorry this bit's a bit off centre, but you can just about see what's going on. Now I realised I forgot to show you the thread I used, so it's a variegated machine embroidery thread. Now as you can see I didn't start and stop my stitching properly. The ends will just allow the fluffiness of the final skull to come through. And now tear off your paper to reveal your design. Now I've put the fabric back in the hoop the right way round for hand embroidery. Checking of course it's drum tight. Now you can see all these little tails have been left behind, so just chop them off about an inch away from the stitching. And do the same for the other side. Now the outer line of the skull, there's a gap in between and we're going to fill that with hand stitching. And as you can see from the original, we've added a little bit of copper in and we've left all these lovely little long ends. So we're going to use one strand of copper and one strand of black machine embroidery thread. Now you can see up here there's not much in the way of a gap, so there's not much point in stitching in there, but we will need to stitch in this bit here. And sticking with the theme of leaving ends and not finishing and starting things properly, I'm going to start from the front and leave this little tail loose, so that that's how you end up with the fluffy look at the end of the project. If you make sure that you put the thread through the original hole when you're pushing the thread back through to the other side, it seems to hold it in place quite well. And we're just going to stem stitch round to fill in the gaps. And when you get to the other end, just bring the thread through to the front like this and snip it off. And do the same thing every time you start or stop a new line of stitching. See, it's a little bit thicker here, so we need another line of stitching. So just go through from the front and leave the tail, so that you make as many tails as you can. Now this should show more clearly the tails that are left over. I've cut them quite short here, but leave them longer, otherwise they'll all escape. And now we get to start the cross hatching as we finish the outer line of stitching here. I've used black for this cross hatching, but don't, whatever you do, use a pale colour because it just looks wrong because shadows aren't pale. Now you can see in the picture the direction the stitches should go. And this is the original, just to show you how it looks. So again, starting from the front so that you leave a nice long tail. Holding the thread end like this allows you to give a rough idea of where you want the stitch to be. And I'm holding it here to keep it out of the way, but it's just as we did before to put the stitch back through the original hole. It really isn't as hard as I'm making it look. And carry on filling in the eye socket like this. And when you've done that, stitch the other direction of stitches on top. Now, as you see from the original, we've done exactly the same thing with the nose. Next we're going to tackle all these little bits of shading, all through the teeth, round here through the cheeks, up at the top of the skull and round by the brow. And the original design makes it very easy to imagine in stitching. Now this is a pen with ink in it that disappears over time, which is very useful for this kind of thing. Now you can see that the shading follows this line that we made on the machine. And this is where the pen works wonders. Just draw in where you want your stitching to go. And use the lines to guide you as you go. Again, starting from the front so you leave a nice tail. And because I was filming, I forgot to add in this little extra line here. This is very useful indeed. It just shows where you want your shading to go up to. Now when you finish your stitching, you'll find you've got a lot of long tails. Now I personally think these are a little bit too long and prefer them about this length. But you don't have to have any tails at all if you want to. You just start and finish your embroidery the conventional way. So it's time to give your skull a haircut. Now I had these lengths of about a centimetre long, something like that, but just keep chopping back slowly until you get an effect that you like. Try to chop sort of individual strands rather than a big lump like this, otherwise they end up looking a bit strange. And your skull is complete. If you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe or to share it with your friends.